Hey everyone. So today I am making a list of all of the YA books about mental illness that changed my life. I've been kind of obsessed with YA books about mental illness for a long time, and I think that has a lot to do with the fact that I dealt a lot with my own anxiety pretty bad, and that I was basically trying to understand it and reading books about other people's troubles with mental illness, even if they're fictional, really helped me kind of come to terms with it in a way. And I actually also included one of my own books in this list because it totally changed my life. And the reason for that was writing about my anxiety helped me to overcome my anxiety, if that makes sense. It was actually my master's thesis project. So, more on that later. But just a forewarning that a lot of the books on this list have a ton of triggers. So, if you're triggered by any of the things that I talk about with these books, I would not recommend reading them. And whether you're dealing with depression, anxiety, OCD, bipolar disorder, any of the mental illnesses listed in this list, or at all, some of these books really can help you understand mental illness and realize that there are ways to overcome it and to be better, because you absolutely 100% can be better if you believe in yourself and you take the steps to get the help that you need. So, without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so the first novel that I put on this list is Every Last Word. And it's because this is the one that I most recently finished. It's basically about this girl who is popular and everybody else thinks she's perfect. She has the life that she's always wanted, but she's dealing with OCD. And she tries so hard to keep it from everyone that she knows because they see her as perfect, and she doesn't want her friends to know because then they would use it against her. This is a really great novel. The mental illnesses that this novel deals with is OCD and depression. So if you feel like you can't read about those topics, definitely watch out for this. There are suicidal instances in this novel, so definitely keep that in consideration. But you'll definitely read this and see that sometimes being popular isn't all that it's cracked up to be. And everyone, no matter what they look like on the outside, is dealing with something on the inside, even if you can't see it. The next novel on this list, so many people already know about, is All the Bright Places. So, this is a Netflix movie now. I don't think the Netflix movie does this book justice. Does the movie ever do a book justice? We'll get into that later. But the mental illnesses covered in this novel, bipolar disorder and depression. You also have suicide dealt with in this novel, just a trigger warning. But I really liked this novel, and I liked everything that it represented. There were a couple things that I definitely would have changed, but I'm not going to get into that because I don't want to spoil it. But it is hugely popular for a reason. I'm not going to say more about this because anything I say probably will end up spoiling it, but this is a really great novel on representation in bipolar disorder and depression. Girl in Pieces covers PTSD and self harm. So, triggers, obviously. But this novel really did a great job of showing what it feels like to want to harm yourself, but not necessarily want to kill yourself. This one is very triggery. I don't think that's a word, but be careful with this, especially if you cannot read about instances of self harm. But Kathleen Glasgow is literally amazing at writing books that deal with mental illness and very hard topics. The next book that's on my list, I don't have an actual copy of, but I just recently finished it. I got an advanced reader copy through NetGalley. I was super excited. It's Chaos Theory by Nick Stone. So the mental illnesses covered in this novel is bipolar disorder, but it also has instances of alcoholism. So that's something to keep in mind. It is so weirdly light, even with the hard topics that it deals with, and it's kind of cutesy with the little romance that it has. So this is a really short novel, and I definitely recommend it if you want something that's not as heavy, but you still want to get that mental health rep. The next book on my list, The Words We Keep, I got this novel, if I'm going to be honest, because of the cover. I love the cover. And then I read it and I was like, wow, this is the most beautiful representation I've read of mental illness in a long time. I really, 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 really enjoy this one. If you want to read one novel on this list, I definitely recommend this one because it's beautiful. It's you deal with OCD, bipolar disorder, anxiety, and depression. So there are a lot of representations in this novel, but it's dealt with in a way that I think is healthy. So the main one is anxiety, and I think that's why I liked it so much because I deal with anxiety. Definitely read this. It was amazing. I loved it. Next on my list is Words on Bathroom Walls. There is a movie for this, and I think the movie did a fairly good job. This is a short novel, so if you want something quick, this is definitely the one. It has representations of schizophrenia, so that's this one. The main reason why I love this novel is because of the inner struggle with acceptance. And if I'm going to be honest, this novel deals a lot with acceptance, especially surrounding mental illness and accepting that while you have it, it's not necessarily who you are. So you can have a mental illness, but it doesn't have to define you. And that's what I loved about this one. So if you haven't seen the movie and you haven't read the book, definitely check this one out. All right, so Goodbye Days. This one, this one has a lot with anxiety and panic disorders. I will tell you, it's in the first couple of chapters, so it's not a spoiler, but when the main character first goes through a panic attack, holy cow. I was a little triggered. It was that real. It felt like a real panic attack, even though I was the one reading about it and not the one having it. So definitely keep that in mind when you read this novel. If you don't feel like you're in the right mindset for that, don't go into this novel thinking that you can to read it. Anyway, this one has a lot of good lessons about forgiveness and acceptance and basically giving yourself grace. All right, so if you follow me on TikTok, you know that I talk a lot about this novel in particular. I read this one in high school, and boy, let me tell you, is it dark. This is probably the one that I will recommend the most, but I always preface it with be careful because it can put you in a very dark headspace just because of how dark the novel is. But I truly, honestly believe that it is so important and it is such an amazing story that can teach people so much. And that one is The Way I Used to Be. This novel absolutely 100% changed my life because it made me aware in a way. And yeah, I'm not going to say a lot more on that, but the mental illnesses covered in this novel, it's only depression. As far as I know, if there was something else, please mention it in the comments. But trigger warning, sexual assault is dealt with in this novel, and that's why it gets really, really dark. So be careful with it, but I do think it's the most beautiful novel on this list, right up next to The Words We Keep. Although The Words We Keep is a lot lighter. If you want something lighter, definitely choose that one. This one is heavy, very, very heavy, but still just as important. Okay, the last novel, don't laugh at me, All the Little Things. It's my novel. The reason I am including this on this list because it truly, truly did change my life. If you're a writer, you know that writing is cathartic. If you've been to therapy, you know that a lot of therapists tell you to write about your feelings because it really helps you get through them and it helps you understand them. I chose to write this story for my thesis project for my master's. I was struggling really, really badly at the time with anxiety. My husband used to travel for work a lot, so he'd never be home during the week, and that caused me to have a lot of anxiety dealing with isolation. I am terrible at being alone. I hate being alone. I'm not good at it. So when I would be alone when he'd go for work, I felt extremely anxious. I wanted to have panic attacks all the time. I couldn't find any way to deal with it. Writing this novel helped me so, so much. And the whole reason that I wrote this novel was obviously to help myself, but to help others as well. Anxiety and panic disorders are what's covered in this novel. You do have a few instances of depression and mention of suicide, so keep that in mind. But I like to think that it is a little light and airy, especially since it's dealing with such a sensitive subject, but you do have panic attacks mentioned throughout the novel and some that are experienced, so keep that in mind. But This story will always, 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 always be close to my heart because it is the one that changed my life forever. And I hope that maybe if you give it a chance, it'll change yours. So that's my list of my top YA novels about mental illness that changed my life. The main thing that all of these novels have in common is how accurately they depict mental illness. Without the accuracy, you truly can't learn anything from the stories, but these authors all took the time to put in the effort and the research to make these novels amazing. And I really hope that they understand how much these stories mean to us who get to read them and enjoy them and learn from them. What are your favorite books that deal with mental health? How did they change your life? Please let me know down in the comments. Let me know if you've read any of the books that I listed and what you thought of them. And if you like this video, please subscribe because I make videos like this all the time and I love talking about books with other people.